Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to start out by, I'm Lisa Retamozo. I also have with me Leah Walls and Dawna Walls monitoring the chat. Um, let's see if y'all wouldn't mind going ahead and putting your questions in the Q&A and also, any, if you guys want to talk to each other's throughout some ideas on chat, that would be great. I'm getting a lot of emails from folks regarding summer only students and the question of when the year starts, when it ends. Some of y'all have already started your new year, I believe. So let me know if you have any questions at all. I mean, I've gone through each field. I don't mind going through it again. I promised you last time that we would touch upon the Blumen SSS version, which, it still has the same fields that whether you're Lakai or student access, and maybe Don, if we can put a poll about who's joining us from those different that utilize the different database programs. And I need to go ahead and make some outreach to Student Access and Lakai so they can come and join us and do an overview of how the APR looks on their platform. But Blumen recently received, thank you, Donna, for that poll. We're asking again for just getting a read of the room because different people come in at different times. All our recordings are on YouTube. I want to remind you also, if this is your first time joining us, thank you. We've already gone through all the fields. I can go through it again. I can highlight certain fields. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. I was gonna take some time to show you all the Blumen came out with a new look. Who knew? I didn't even know. I've been using it for 33 years and I'm one of their trainers and surprise me. Um, and we were just talking about how we were working on developing through Scribe step-by-step instructions on how to do certain procedures that go into a little bit more detail than the Blumen handbook. And then they came out with a whole new look. The good news is the steps are still the same. It's just someone has rearranged the furniture or revamped the whole house. But once you find that room, everything is there where it was left off. But we in Trio, we don't like a lot of change, do we? All right. So have you ever completed an SSS APR? We have 61% that say yes, 39% no. And what database? Right now we've got Bloomin on here. And we do have student access and Excel. Okay, so student access and Excel neck and neck. Okay, great. We do have a question here. I'm going to go ahead and answer that. Thank you for that poll. On the PE report, the prior experience report, we should enter the objective from 5 years ago. Is that correct? Also, will we receive PE points for that objective since this is the first year of this grant cycle? Okay, first of all, for your PE report, and I'm not sure, do you mean in your database, whatever database program you're utilizing? Because when you actually go online, your objectives, when you get your PE report, will be pre-populated. And the objectives will be this APR, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm working in so many programs and I get confused, right? You all are about to end your first year of the new funding cycle. So the objectives on the PE report are the objectives from your latest proposal. So no, to answer your question here, let me make sure I'm reading it correctly. Um, you should enter the objective from this latest proposal. Okay. Even if you are so brand new, you're not going to actually get a chance to get credit for it at all. Doesn't matter. Either, the department will have an NA for you online, but if you're using Blumen, go ahead and just plug in the objective that you're supposed to meet. Okay. But no, nothing now is regarding the 5 years. The proposal from the prior proposal. That's already done. This APR is for the first year of the new funding cycle. And even if you're a banked year, I don't know if you've heard of that, meaning that you're still on last funding cycle's funds for whatever reason. You long time ago, your proposal scored so high, they gave everybody an extra year. Long story short, even though your money for this first funding cycle may be using up the last year of the last funding cycle, your objectives all have performance-wise are all based on the latest proposal that was submitted. When 2025, we turned that in. So no. And the other thing also, will we receive PE points for that objective since this is the first year of this grant cycle? Well, the objective reads that students that were new, if you're a 2-year or a 4-year, oh, hey, so you're a 4-year college. I can't believe I didn't recognize the name. It's fun. That's how tired I am and crazy. But hey, so this objective is based off of students in your case that were new to the new first served by the project 6 years ago. Okay, because you're at a 4-year institution. So in the database, you would plug in the percentage that we put into your proposal in the objective section for that objective. Even though I don't think this would be your 5th year, so you're not eligible yet. I don't think you'll be eligible for it until 26, 27, correct? Okay. Um, so no, you won't receive any PE points because again, you won't have this, I'm sorry, this director that I'm speaking to, their project was funded for the first time in 2025. So they're finally, possibly this is this first year, maybe you do have some graduates. I get confused with the years, but it goes back to 6 years ago. Okay, so you want to plug that in. So you may or may not uh, have students that count toward that objective. Possibly. I'm not sure. So you let me know. But yeah, so some of y'all still may not be eligible for this, the 6 years until next year. Okay. Great question. Thank you for that. But some people were funded brand new. So of course, you know that it'll be a minute before you get to get credit for either if you're a 2-year college or 4-year college for when students have been brand new. But the cohort goes back to students that were first served by the project years and years ago. Not that it starts over again every funding cycle. But great question, and hopefully I answered that question, didn't muddle it up. But good to hear from you. I've seen talked to you in a while, so good to know. Any other questions that we have regarding that? And I'm going to type done there. Okay. Do summer students? Anybody confused about that? Um, let's look at this section of the APR. Section 2, part 1, I'm sorry, section 1, part 2, about your required services. And I am sharing this, right, Donna? I hope I'm sharing. Oh, no, I'm not. My
I'm just
bad.
seeing the Bloomin
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, sorry about that. Right here. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm looking at the form that's in the Google Drive. This is a draft of what we think the 25-26 APR format will look like. And again, just to recap, Section 1, Part 1 will be on the actual website that you will log on to about 30 days before it's due. You'll get a notification that it's now available and you can log on to it. If you create every year, you have to do a password and be recognized as the director. So some of you that are new, you want to make sure that the department has on file that you're the new director, that have your email address. There's a way to contact the help desk if that doesn't happen when you realize it doesn't happen when you try to log on. But when you log on and go through a dual verification authentication, when you get in here, it should be pre-populated like it says here. It doesn't look exactly the same, but what's important and what has really come up more often now in all the questions that I'm getting from folks about when students count or when the reporting period starts, it's about question 4B here on the first day of classes. So whatever the first day of classes began in fall of 2025. That's the first day of classes, is also the first day of your APR for 25-26. Okay, which means that the first day of the APR reporting period for 26-27 is on the first day of fall classes for 2026. Although this is up here under section 1, part 1, it's going to come up as possibly an issue when you're dealing with section 2 and some of the dates you plug in there. Okay, so you may, hopefully you don't, but if you get an error message regarding the date of first service and it says it's not in the right year, it might have something to do with whatever you plugged in as the first day of classes. So initially you're thinking, oh, what's the connection? It seems like there's no connection. There will be a connection on this question here 4B. Okay, so remember, it doesn't match your budget period unless it does by accident. Your budget period usually is September 1st to August 31st. And that's regarding the budget, but your reporting period is going to be based on the first day of classes every fall semester, and it ends the day before the fall semester starts for the next year. Section 2 here is dealing about services that you all have provided either directly through the project or have referred students to receive that service from another service provider. You get to claim credit for it, even if you don't follow up to see if the student actually receives services from the referral program that you sent them to or department on campus. You get credit merely for the referral. Now, when you recommend services like tutoring that your project directly is prepared to provide, and you say, look, you need to get tutoring from our tutors. If they don't receive tutoring from your tutors, you don't get to count it. But if you refer them to get tutoring outside of the office, across the hall or across campus, and you refer them and you don't even try to follow up, which I know you will, right? We're SSS, we do that. But if you don't go ahead and do that, then you won't, it still counts as a service. But that's the difference here on the report. You've got services that you directly are asked to provide numbers about, and then the referrals. And down here, it tells you actually what I just said to y'all, that you don't have to worry about the number. You don't have to worry about verifying if they have received the service from who you've sent them to. And it tells you about the number of participants. They don't want to know the number of contacts. They want to know how many participants received these services at least once. We've got some questions. How can we update the required services in Bloomin'? Okay, a great question. These services in Bloomin', okay, when you look in Bloomin', it's under activity service group list, group list, I can't spell GROUP, group list. When you go into Bloomin', these should be, sorry, this is what you should see. You should see a row for the direct services and then the same services, but it says referral. So what about 14? That's what you should see in Bloomin'. If you see some other stuff in there, it's not counting toward the APR. And I can look, I'll check in the new Bloomin' to see if they've taken out those services that were there. There were APR services for previous APRs that Bloomin' had left in there. And a lot of people started using them. It started to get confusing. So I know in the years past, I've always told them, under activity services group, which I wish would say APR listing, you should only have there just the required services that are on the APR. Now in Bloomin', there's also another thing that right there underneath it called activity services listing. And that listing is something that you can manipulate. The activity services group, you should not touch that unless it's to get rid of some extra APR services that no longer count. But you should leave it alone otherwise so that it gives you the information automatically here that you get on a screen that you can type in onto the website. The activity services listing in Bloomin', yes, is something where you can update, and I can show you there in a second how to go in and do that. If it's still in the same place, because I'm still having to try to deal with it. So if Dawna or Leah, if you could remind me when we go back to Bloomin', I say, what was I supposed to do here? It's to show how they can update not the required services. I'll take a look to see if the required services are there and that they match these. But we're usually not supposed to mess with the required services, but we can mess with the activity services listing in Bloomin', which I call my internal customized list that I use most of the time because behind the scenes, I've linked what I can link to the required APR buckets here, characteristics. So during the year, I see the internal listing. And then once a month, I can look at, or anytime, I can see how they're pre-populating in the format that you see and the required services that the Department of Ed will require. Okay, so if y'all could remind me to do that, I will. I just logged on and not sure if this is time to ask. Is it wise to pay for a professional development workshop in October? Asking because a new assistant director for SSS. Is it wise to pay for a professional development workshop in October? Well, what you want to do is, it depends if it's a contract or if it's a one-time service. Contracts that are put into place and signed and start during this year, I mean, this year, your budget year, which ends August 31st, typically, if they get started there, and especially if there's a clause in the contract, they can continue on to the next year. But this specific workshop or training, it occurs in the next funding cycle. I mean, sorry, the next budget year. So you can pay for it, professional development, but it would have to come out of 26-27 funds. Okay. Because it's occurring then, unless it's some contracted deal here. All right. So question 10F. Okay, let me see. Asks if we receive institutional. Let's go back to that. Someone's asking to 10F. Okay, so here we have 10F listed. Let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger down here. Received institutional or other non-federal funds. Okay. Would we list any indirect funds here if we get them? No, don't list any indirect funds here if you get them. Indirect funds are counted as, they're already counted for. So these would be as part of the budget. They're listed on the budget. Your institution can claim that amount. Um, you want to list any other institutional or non-federal funds that you're getting from the institution above and beyond, right? And there's no, they're just trying to, see if you're getting additional funding. What really, really matters is 10C if you've given out grant aid. Number 10, if your college is required to provide matching. And then 10E, what's the dollar amount? All right. But on the received institutional or other non-federal funds, because even the indirect they give you is once upon a time federal funds. Okay. All right. So let's see. Okay. Uh, Hello, our college starts classes September 8th. Okay, so we can continue to recruit up until that date, and they would be in cohort 25, 26, or 26, 27. Okay, great question. See, this is a college that their data first service, which is field 4, right over here. I'm not data first service, their first day class is 4B. But it does come into play when these students receive their services. So these students would be receiving their first service sometime after September 8th in order to count. If you want these students to count toward 26, 27, technically, then their first date of service would occur on September 8th or afterward if they're new students, so they can be counted toward 26, 27. If you are still in the process of recruiting, and you need your numbers, um, you know, uh, because it's starting September 8th, technically, yes, you have until then to go ahead and count them for 25, 26 numbers, but their cohort is going to be 26, 27 either way. All right. So the mere fact that they were uh, initially served for the first time, which is field 18, that's why I go back to that. Field 18 for every student is when they were first served by the project, ever. Not enrolled in college, not selected, but when they were first served. If that occurs anytime during the summer months, up until the day of the new reporting period, you don't have a choice. They are going to be in cohort 26, 27, but they also get to count for 25, 26 numbers. They're classified as new summer student, whether they were taking classes or not, is a code. Code 8 is for those students who were taking summer classes. Code 9 would be for those students that are not. Now, in your situation here, I don't know if you're brand new funded. I don't know. There's so many things I don't know, but it depends. If I've met substantial progress, if you have enough students so far where you're at, I guess, what is it, 75 or 80% capacity, or maybe you're at 90% capacity and you're trying to get to 100. I would make the recommendation that maybe you don't force unless you need to get to a certain percentage to be in substantial progress, which is super important. So I really shouldn't say without knowing your numbers, but let's say I was at 85% or 86%, 88%, and I'm trying to get to 90%. Well, remember, this first year doesn't count toward prior experience points. So it doesn't really matter if I'm not at 100% or 90% because there's no calculations going on for that. So I could use this year to say, you know what, I'm at 86% capacity, 86% of the numbers I'm supposed to serve. Are these students, is it going to be, would it be better for me to wait until after September 8th so that they become, these students are regular new students? And because as y'all probably already know, it's kind of a reporting headache to deal with new summer kids. But again, I'm not sure of the situation, so I would just, the way you put the question, these students would be cohort 26, 27, either way, because they were served for the first time sometime during summer of 2026. Okay. Whether or not you wait to bring them in as brand new students after September 8th is up to you. Okay. And then that way they'd count for 26, 27, their cohort 26, 27. And honestly, if everything else lines up, a lot easier reporting wise on your APR. Our director of TRIO inherited TRIO grant cycle, okay, and the grant expires in 2030. Right, so, right, correct. Do we need to enter into student access the previous three cohorts, or is it okay to start entering only cohort 27 and 28? I guess you're talking about the codes, cohort 27, I think, or the last 2 years. You're talking about the codes, right? Let me see. Let me go back to that field about cohorts. If I'm trying to memorize the fields, but I'm thinking you're talking about code field 21 and that you're talking about cohort um 25, 26 would be last year and 28 is 26, 27. Wouldn't it be nice if these codes kind of match? So that's why I want to make sure to not only show you all, but make sure I'm on the right page. Um, and the grant expires in 2030. Okay. Do you still need to enter into student access the previous three cohorts? Well, a couple of things here. I'm assuming that this is either today you're in your either second, third, or fourth funding cycle, that this grant was in existence in the prior year, correct? If this grant that you're talking about was already in place in 2020-2025, then you need, depending if you're a 2 year or a 4 year college, you'll have to go back to previous cohorts. In fact, at the very top here, it tells you how far back you have to go. The very top of this page, I think it's page 4. The department requires grantees to submit participant records for all students served by the project in the past 6 years from 2019 through 2025 in the case of a 4 year institution. So cohort years 2019-20 through 2025-26 in the case of a 4 year institution. If you are a 2 year institution, you have to report on cohorts 2021-22 through 25-26, right? So it's not, you'll have to go back when you're talking about working on the APR. Okay, so hopefully that helped. And that's on the page, the top of page 4, I believe, on the instructions. Okay. Will the APR report consist of prior grant cycles? No, the APR report that you will receive when you turn in your APR for 25-26 will only have the prior experience breakdown for 25-26. And in fact, even though, again, I keep telling you that it doesn't count toward it doesn't count, the points are not going to count toward the next proposal. They still give you a prior experience report every single year. At the end of year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will get, whether you like it or not, when you submit the report and receive the results from the department, you will have results, just keep in mind for year one and year five, there are not any points added. What's kind of not annoying, but when it does count and at the end of years two, three, and four, it would be nice. It would be nice if every year that we went on during the funding cycle that they would attach the previous year's PE points so you could, in one place at a glance, see everything that you've earned so far. Now, maybe they'll do that. Maybe they'll change the format to include that. But after all these years, I mean, they're doing big changes already. Look how much Bloomin' changed. But on the department, I think they're only going to give you 1 year at a time. So you have to, which you should anyway, you should save in a digital folder all your APRs for the whole funding cycle. And you should know by the time you're ready to submit your next proposal, you should know by looking at the APR for the end of year two, three, and four, the PE points. You add them together, divide it by three, and you should know before you even submit the proposal next time around how many points you have going into the next competition, but it won't have it listed on each individual report for the previous funding cycle. For programs who are still recruiting during the summer, do we also have to serve the new summer students? All right, so let me make sure I understand your question. For programs who are still recruiting, I guess you still need numbers. You must probably still need numbers to be at substantial progress, whether that's 75 or 85. It's on your grant award notification, your GAN, G-A-N. I forget what page it's on, but it specifically states, hey, for the first year of this funding cycle, you need to be at a certain percentage. And I don't want to, I think it's 75% for the first year. And then for the second year, maybe 85%, but we're concerned about the first year. Substantial progress just means that you are barely okay numbers wise, where they're going to, if everything else is okay, they will strongly consider issuing it your second year grant award notification because you made substantial progress. Now, substantial progress is is barely like someone saying, hey, you're showing up to work every day and you're okay, you're here, but if you want to get a promotion and want to think about long-term, advancement with this company, you need to be making your objectives as soon as possible, getting your 100% your numbers. It's definitely by the end of year two, being at 100% capacity. And let's see how you do performance-wise on these objectives. And then you can move on or possibly stay in funding. So substantial progress is definitely not the same as earning PE points. So again, I go back to this. If you're still needing numbers and you say you're recruiting students during this summer, you can't count anybody. Recruitment means nothing on the APR unless these students have received a service. So not only do they have to be recruited, they have to be selected, and then they have to receive at least two services. And technically, the two services they receive should have been on a plan that you all devised of the list of services that they should receive in order to make sure that on an annual basis, it's services that will help them to stay at the college and eventually graduate. I mean, that's the full intent, but we shorten it to say, look, did they receive at least two services? So I might in the summer identify someone, and someone who's new to the college and recruit them and select them and possibly even serve them all in the same day. That can happen, but you notice how it happened. There was a steps, selection, and then they were served. It could have happened on the same day, but they have to be served. And during that meeting, with that student, I need to make sure I provide them with at least two services. The regulations state that they have to receive services to be counted as a participant. So these students, yes, they have to be served in order to, and what's critical is not when they were selected on the APR. The APR cares about when they were first served, and that's field number 18. That is the most important field, y'all, in the whole APR. I don't care what you tell me or something else. Yes, I know there's fields about graduation, but it always goes back at every single issue or scenario that someone has asked me about, or what about this, or what about this student? somehow it always goes back to when was their first day of service? Okay, when was their first day of service? So new students in the summertime, they have all students, no matter if you're new, continuing, or new summer only, you have to have provided them with at least two services. It could happen at one time, two services, and that's how you get to count them as a participant toward your numbers. You're funded to serve. Can I count a student on the APR if they have all W's but received at least two or more services? If not, should I report them as a prior year but not receiving any services or as a prior year not enrolled? Great question. So my question to you is, well, you already answered it. So they may have all W's. And again, are you saying that they were enrolled? Remember, in order to count a participant, not only do they have to receive the two services, so you have that covered. You told me they received at least two or more services. So that's the second part of what makes a participant. The first part, though, is they have to be enrolled. And somebody can be enrolled. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. They could have been here all fall semester or for part of the semester, and they were started being enrolled, but they have W's. So technically, they were enrolled. They were enrolled. And I don't know if they did this two semesters in a row or just one semester. The question also, if I could ask you some more questions, look, I'm sorry, but when you ask me one question, I'm going to come back with three or four questions to give you a complete answer. So I can only give you incomplete answers because I don't have all the information. And that's what makes SSS very intensive and like individualized because it just begs follow-up questions. So in this case, I would ask you, well, do you have enough students already to meet substantial progress? Because this is the one year where you don't have to be at 100%. This is the one year you don't have to be at 90%. So also, I have to ask you, was this a brand new student or a continuing student? Do you have enough students to be substantial progress? Because otherwise, I would say, you know what, this may be somebody we act like we didn't serve. We have the records that we served them, but I may delete them from my database if they'd never been reported before. And if I have somebody to replace them, so I can still be in substantial progress. So it all depends. Um, if you are desperate for the numbers, you could technically count this person because they were enrolled. The fact that they got the W's, and depending if they're new or continuing, I would, maybe do some other things strategy wise. But if I was in a situation where I needed the numbers, I would count them and I would put not in good standing. I would put them as yes, they were served, but not in good standing. And I would see if they're coming back or not. They may or may not be persisting. If they were continuing, I'm kind of stuck doing that because they were served before. If they were brand new, I've got a couple of options here. The other thing here is that you could, if you want, if it looks like maybe they're continuing, so if you wanted to, you can make them prior year, but they're prior year enrolled but not receiving services. But see, that doesn't make sense because they did receive services. So it's a unique situation. So you've got a couple of ways you could do this. I just need to find out a little bit more to give you the full answer, right? So hopefully I kind of gave you several answers, different scenarios there. Hopefully it came across. If not, email me and you give me the whole story. What happens if you have not met substantial progress and your institution's academic year starts August 24th? You need to be prepared for your list of your reasons why. Start drafting that memo. If you have not met substantial progress and the year ends August 24th, you still have a little bit of time, but you need to go ahead and start making your list of these are the reasons why we were not at substantial progress and start drafting that and bring in your institution because I'm pretty sure it was took a long time to hire someone. I don't know if you're a brand new project. Yes, due to delays in hiring. And the other thing is, were you brand new or was this an established uh, project, meaning that this was not their first funding cycle? Okay. All right. You got a little bit of breathing room there. So start making up all your list of bullets. This, and bring it back to the delay in hiring. It was a really crazy year, y'all, right? It has been a crazy couple of 2 or 3 years. Um, I think there'll be more how you say not as harsh with brand new programs, but you want to come prepared and be ready to defend and also have another little set of bullets of what you guys have done so far to catch up. Okay? It's really I sense that they don't like shutting down programs. No one likes that. It's a headache to do. So I don't see, even now, I think it's worse to shut them down like that, especially the new ones. So I believe, on the new ones, you'll have a little bit of breathing room, but just come prepared with your lists of why and then what you're doing right now to make sure it never happens again. If you're an existing program, though, that's been around a while, that might be a little harder to defend, even though it has been a crazy time, crazy year, all that craziness, you know, it's just, I think they'll have a little bit more grace for the brand new programs. If our semester starts on August 24th, 2026, could you please clarify if this would be the last date for us to count any new summer students, or do okay. So once again, and let me show you where it's listed here. Number one, the question is, what was your date of first services for fall of 2025? So now I'm going to ask you all, well, what is the first date of services? And you just answered me. You said, okay, our for 26-27, our new year starts. In your case, for 26-27, your new year will start August 24th, 2026. So you only have until the day before to get new students in and served, and that's really pushing it. If you're already at substantial progress, I would say, you know what, why don't you wait and bring them in as brand new regular students, for 26-27. But if you need them, you have the up until August 23rd to count them as new summer students. You do not have until the 31st. Why? Because on the other document here, and again, I don't know if I have it ready to show. Dawna, can you share or someone share the detailed instructions or in a second here? The other document here. If I try to do it, I'm going to get lost, y'all. That's how crazy it's been today. The other document is the instructions. And on the bottom of that page, it clearly tells you that, and it gives you a couple of examples too, that your first day of performance period for your APR goes along with the fall, the date, the first date of the fall semester every year. So it'll fluctuate. You do not have until August 31st, though, unless your date of fall classes starts on September 1st. And again, that's in the instructions, which is not this document, it's another document, and it's on the bottom of page one. All right. So it is, yeah, I mean, I get this question all the time, and people will tell you, well, your budget ends on August 31st. Okay, so you're dealing with a couple of different timelines here. Your budget, September 1st through August 31st, but your performance period for the APR goes by the first day of fall classes every year. So it'll fluctuate slightly. Okay, then of course you've got your college's budget period that doesn't match September 1st to August 31st. So you're always constantly living in these different time spans here, or these different sets of timing. Okay. If our semester starts on, okay, we already answered that. So you do not have until the 31st. All right. Two-year institution. Thank you. Question about a student who didn't complete their degree yet, but was accepted into a BAS program. The student is enrolled in the BAS program in 2026, but will also finish their AAS. Thank you, Dawna. So if you can scroll down to the bottom of the first page. There we go. So the grantee the period. So the project and individual participant information provided in the report must cover the 12-month academic year of the grantee institution instead of the 12-month budget project year. For example, in 25-26, the academic year is roughly August, September of 2025 through August 2026 while the budget period for most grants is September 1st through August 31st. So they actually tell you in the breakdown here the scenarios for when you can count. There's one, two, and I think there's a third one on the beginning of page two. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so that's on the detailed instructions. So a student who didn't complete their AS degree, but it was accepted, students enrolled, but will also finish. All right, so you're a two-year institution, and I'm assuming correct me if I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, is a BAS program is that another associate's degree or if it's a bachelor's degree? And thank you. Someone said 75% substantial progress for year one, 85% after that. Okay, thank you for that, Michelle. I appreciate that. Um, back to this. Someone let me know. All right, so two-year institution. Okay, bachelor's degree. Okay, but your grant is grant though is classified under and using the objectives designated for a two-year school. So to answer that, you'll have to wait until they finish their associate's degree in order to count that as graduation. I don't think it'll count as transfer because it looks like they're not going to transfer. So that's one of the things that I don't think this was very common back in the day when they developed the APR and the objectives. They assume that once you're a two-year college, you'd never offer bachelor's degrees, or if you're at I guess it's changing now. But no, you're at a two-year institution, so you have to think that way. So you'd have to wait until they get their AA to whenever, if they do it at the same time as a bachelor's degree, fine, but you're going to claim that they got an associate's degree. Okay, and probably won't be able to say that they transferred, unfortunately. Any suggestions on how to report the student for the 25-26? Well, um, no, well, the question is, did they graduate yet? You said they didn't complete their degree yet. So they haven't completed a degree. They have not graduated with a two-year associate's degree or even a certificate. So you can't claim that. So I would say that they're continued to be enrolled. They would come back as a continuing student. Field 34 would say that they came back for another semester. And I don't know if it's going to happen in 26, 27, but when they do graduate finally and get that associate's degree, then you can claim it then. Otherwise, it's just continuation, like any other student who is coming back for another year but has not graduated with an associate's degree yet. Okay. And that's going to be the tricky part. And so sometimes you may get that associate's degree, but because they're not transferring, you may not ever get the transfer. It's just not set up that way, unfortunately. All right. All right. So let's see here. I have a question about how we determine low income eligibility. I was told that we use the student's adjusted gross income. Is that accurate? No, it's not accurate, actually. You can go into the SSS regulations. It tells you the definition for low income is taxable income. Taxable income. The other thing is this is a two-part question. So no, that's not correct. You use a student's if the student is independent, meaning that they're over the age of 24, they're married, they're a veteran, or they have dependents other than a spouse. There may be, if they were foster care, maybe they're younger than 24, but they're aging out of the foster care, or they were emancipated youth or under guardianship, that makes them independent. If the student is independent when they first apply, if they're independent, you need to get from that student the number of family members in their household, and you need to go by their taxable income, which comes from their tax form. Okay. Taxable, not adjusted. Financial aid uses adjusted gross income, right? But we go by taxable income per the TRIO regulations. So that is not accurate. If they are not over the age of 24, if they're not married, if they're not any of those things that I mentioned to be independent, they are considered dependent, even if they haven't been claimed on their parents' taxes in years. Doesn't matter. Just like financial aid, this is where we are the same, like financial aid, is how we classify students for financial aid. There's a very a very specific checklist for if you're independent or dependent. TRIO and financial aid are on the same team when it comes to that. Where we kind of break up with each other is after that point of where we basically label anybody applying as dependent or independent is when we talk about low income eligibility for Pell. Financial aid goes by adjusted gross income. And we said, no, we want more people to be eligible for TRIO. So we're going to go by taxable income. A lot more folks. Why do we do that? Because taxable income allows more people to be eligible as low income than if we used adjusted gross income like financial aid does. So that's the difference there. Okay. Um, so you can't use adjusted gross income. There's ways that if financial aid um, can tell you that this is a student's, or again, once you find out it's about their parents, if they're independent or dependent. Let's assume the student is independent. So you just ask about their income. The only way financial aid can really help you is if the student applied for financial aid and financial aid has their adjusted gross income and maybe they were selected for verification, and maybe the financial aid office requested or demanded, look, you're selected for verification. We need extra stuff above and beyond what we typically get for the FAFSA. So we're going to ask for you to turn in your or your parents' tax forms. That if they turn that in, then financial aid would have access to taxable income off the tax form. Most of the time, that only happens 33% of the time. So the only thing financial aid has that they can share with you is the adjusted gross income. And the only way that you can use that to see if someone does qualify as low income for TRIO, which is taxable, is if their adjusted gross income as is with the number of people in household on the FAFSA. When you compare it to the TRIO low income chart, which is on taxable income, you following me? If that adjusted gross income is already so low that it's lower than the TRIO taxable income, then for sure that family or that student, their taxable income is much lower and possibly zero. So you see, you have to translate, and that only happens maybe 15% of the time. Otherwise, the adjusted gross income is way higher than the taxable income, and I'm back to square one. Well, how do I get that? That's why we use the written statement. Again, it depends. It's a student is dependent. I got to ask for the parents. And when I get the written statement, I probably will get adjusted gross income because nobody knows their taxable income. Everybody knows they're adjusted. I might have to go back and forth to finally get the correct taxable income. And the whole thing, why we go that extra mile is because more people qualify as low income if you use taxable. All right. So I'm glad you brought that question up. For enrollment status, the APR says to use the number of credits. Okay, enrollment status. And again, what field are you referring to specifically? Um, to use number of credits a student is enrolled in at the end of the semester. That might be, let me go back. I can share my screen again, right? I'm gonna allow, and let's see if this works. Let me go back to this. Okay, field 23. Let's look at, and field 20 and 23 drive me crazy. People spend the most time pulling their hair out about 20 and 23, and neither one of those fields counts toward any PE points or objectives, but we have to answer them, and they're so time consuming. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. Okay, field 23. It's not at the end of the semester. Okay, it's at the end of the academic year. Okay, do not count the credit hours a student officially dropped during any of the terms and calculation. We can't count any incompletes or Fs. We can? We can, yeah. It sounds like you have a different interpretation of the question. Can you please clarify? Okay, so right here, and again, I'm not going to ask Dawna to share it, but if you look at the instructions, on the other document, when they talk about field 23, that's where I read specifically where it says, and Don, I don't know if you get a chance to look at field 23 on the instructions, if you can copy and paste the wording that it says there. I'm paraphrasing. I hate to do that because I want you to have the exact language. Um, it doesn't matter. It says, um, how shall I paraphrase it? It'd be best if we could show it, but they just want to know how many hours they were enrolled in. It doesn't matter if the student withdrew or didn't get credit for it. Does that make a difference? They don't. The only time they bring up earned is with the summer participants. Okay. So they're looking at how many hours they were enrolled in. Doesn't necessarily have to match the number of hours they earned. Does that make sense? Okay. And look up in the instructions and we'll be able to do that. Is this somebody put in or is that what you put in from the instructions to determine participants' enrollment status?
This is
Um,
field 23, is that what you said?
Yes, 23 in the instructions. Do they have anything listed there? And I don't know if this person already copy and pasted from it and put in the question, determine a participant's enrollment status. Not we, use a
Yeah, it
sum,
looks like it is.
okay, of the credit hours they enrolled in. So you're not supposed to count any non-credit hours at the end of each academic term. So you add those up during the reporting period, right? The sum of the credits or clock hours enrolled in at the end of the fall spring semester. Do not count any credit or clock hours that the student officially dropped during any of the terms in the calculation of enrollment status. Okay, so opposite, right? They're saying to drop it. Please note that the enrollment status is based on the number of students a student enrolled in. Okay, well, then it says the number that they earned. Donna, take a look at that. Initially, at first glance, it looks like it's contradicting itself. Oh, officially dropped. Okay. Officially dropped is the key. Do not count any credit or clock hours a student officially dropped during any terms in the calculation. All right, so if they officially dropped, you don't want to count them. But then it says here, please note the enrollment status is based on the number of hours a student enrolled in, not the number of hours a student earned. So if a student earned an incomplete or failed the course, those hours should be included but not if they officially withdrew. Does that make sense to y'all? There is a difference there. These hours are to be included in the number of hours a student enrolled in. Courses that are audited are not counted toward the number of hours enrolled. Okay. So the difference there I see is if they officially withdrew. And I don't know if that was your initial question, if they withdrew. If they officially withdrew, I'm not going to count it. But if they enrolled and whatever happened and they didn't withdraw and they went ahead and didn't earn the course for whatever reason, I'm still going to count the hours enrolled, right? I'm still going to count that. And enrolled in at the end of this, do not count the credit hours officially dropped. Okay. If they officially dropped it, not. But what if we can count any incompletes? You, I don't have a different interpretation. It is actually two different situations. One is where they officially dropped. The other one is where they kept going, and I guess hoping that they would do okay, and they ended up not earning or something happened. They didn't officially withdraw. Now, I will tell you about 23. Um, it's not a critical field. So, and it says full time. This is not when they first get selected. This is at the end of the year. It's the sum total of the 3 semesters if they were enrolled in the 3 semesters. Exclude any hours they officially withdrew from, but if they didn't officially withdrew, they still get counted as long as they were credit hours to begin with, that they were trying to earn credit hours. So just be consistent and also, people sometimes use clock hours or credit hours. It's a different interpretation. And this is one of the hardest things to script into the database, automatically. People say, oh, we're going to get our database to feed and tap into that. And I said, that's great, but look at these definitions that you're stuck with via the Department of Ed translations. So how do those translate and how many credit hours you all use hours or credit hours? Just be consistent. And here's the bottom line. 23, do your best, but don't stress out about 23 because it could be wrong and it will never come back to haunt you or bite you or, or to the only time this really becomes an issue is with your new kids. Any new student served on for any year, if it's a new student, 20, because it's the same question. 20 is asking what was their enrollment status at the end of first year served. That 20 and 23 must match when somebody is a brand new student. And that's where people get, well, sometimes when they're new, they put how many hours they were enrolled in that semester by accident into their database, and then they compare it to what they actually earned. No, it's the same question. It's like I'm asking a new student, hey, by the end of your first year, how many hours were you enrolled in? I'm sorry, I may be using earned and enrolled in. Okay, then 2 minutes later, hey, how many hours were you enrolled in this year? You just asked me that. Yeah, you just, but it was two different mindsets, 23, you ask of everybody who's new and continuing every year. 20, you just ask at the end of their first year. You want to get more complicated is when these currently right now, your new summer students, right, for 25, 26, either code 8 or code 9. Those new summer students in 26, 27 have to become new students. So you'll have to make 20 and 23 match for them, even though you're thinking, wait a minute, it's their second APR. Their first APR, they were new students, right? But you can't go from new summer student to continuing. You have to go from new summer student in 25, 26 to new student in 26, 27 to finally continuing in 27, 28. Fun, right? Summer students don't play. And so that's sometimes where that gets confused. So I hope that was a way to answer the difference there. And thank you for copy and pasting the questions, the answers from the instructions. So the difference was officially withdrew versus not officially withdrew. How would you handle a student who finished both an associate's degree and bachelor's degree in the same year? You're a quarter school, but are you a 2-year or 4-year college? I'm assuming you're a two a fit. What does the department have you listed as? Is what counts.
Lisa,
When.
I think down below he said you could ignore my previous
Oh, okay. All
question.
right. Okay. All right. Gotcha. Okay. Since the APR, we're not, yep, there you go. That's what I was getting at. Some things are already out of your control, and some things do not actually work. Sometimes you have to be wrong to be right on this APR. It doesn't take into account every single situation. Um, it just doesn't. But that's why I always go back to look, whatever you're classified as on your program profile form when the grant went in is what you pretty much stay at, and you're stuck with that reporting requirements for a 2-year, even though you may be in a situation where some of your students end up getting a 4-year degree at the same institution. Alrighty here. So I promise one of these days I'll get into Bloomin', or I'll actually do a special session, or I can say maybe next week it'll be all Bloomin' related. So I hope you guys come back who are not Bloomin' folks. Um, it's still the same fields. We'll still come across a lot of the same questions. But I just wanted to show you all how we check ourselves on the APR using Bloomin', and where, the activities and services. Those folks that were asking me, if you're still on the webinar, please email me, and I can try to meet with you. It takes about 10 minutes to show you how you can update your internal services, or you can also contact Bloomin', but do not mess with the group listing because that's your APR fields, unless you talk to Bloomin', and they'll talk you through in case you inherited a whole bunch of old APR fields. You want to get rid of those, okay? All right, we are about 2 more minutes. I don't know if we have any questions. Thank you, Dawna, for bringing up the instructions. And I'm telling you, Field 18, um, if you're struggling, you can't figure out what is wrong, go back to Field 18 and trace your steps from there. And that's usually where I'm able to solve almost any APR student situation, is by starting and looking at Field 18. And then I look and double check the cohort, when they were supposed to, and that usually also is my second clue. All right. Field 18 is so important. And in addition to fields 24 and 25 for good academic standing and the GPA that should match your definition of what good academic standing means. Field 34 is critical for your first objective on persistence. All right. And then when we get to going to field 31 and 32, those count toward graduation and transfer. So if you think about it, there's maybe 6 fields on the whole APR of 37 fields that directly impact your objectives and your prior experience. All the other fields are, just collecting information that, especially fields 20 and 23, make it match for a new student. Do your best, be consistent. If you're going to be wrong, be consistently wrong. But again, no one gets hurt if for some reason 23 is not perfect. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll have the recording ready, I think sometime tomorrow. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel along with all our other previous sessions, okay? Thank you all so much. And thanks for the audience participation. I appreciate it because sometimes I do not have that ready, or it's great to get you all to copy and paste those questions. And when you see people asking questions on Facebook, please do the same thing. You can try to tell folks, but it's always best if you can copy and paste exactly where they can get the answers. Okay.